Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our fourth volume of Sketchbook Saturday. Here are some of the sketches that I've done into this book. This was started when I was so upset about so many children being in the news, either harmed by caregivers or strangers, or just disappeared. I don't know what may or may not have happened to them. So this was a way to soothe myself, and I decided to fill this sketchbook with kids. So, if we haven't met, I'm Viv, this is Art with Viv, and we are just going to go ahead and get started on this Saturday's sketch. Now, this Saturday's sketch is a sweet little girl, and she's just sort of leaning up against a brick wall. I am going to use some darker, like 6B pencils for the really darker areas of her face, and of course, I'll just use my regular number 2 HB pencil. That seems to be my favorite one for the sketchbook. The paper is perfect for it. It's just really regular plain paper. I made these sketchbooks and they have my art on them. You can find them in my shop. I'll link that below. But this little girl, she just reminds me of almost me when I was in grade school, elementary school, whatever you call it. I call it elementary school, but I know the names change over the years, and let's face it, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, so I don't know what it may be called now. But I used to do this at recess. I would go up and get against the brick wall, and I would just watch everybody. I would watch the interactions between my classmates. I would watch them play. I wasn't sad. I just wanted to separate myself and just sort of observe. I like to know what the dynamics were between my friends and their other friends, their friendships. And you can tell a lot about other people just by watching them and see how they interact with each other. So I just like to do that. I like to sort of separate myself and get into a calm spot and watch and see how everybody acted and reacted to each other. I was just a very, very shy child when I was in elementary school. The teachers just kept writing things that, Vivian is really intelligent, but she won't speak up. She doesn't speak out in class. She doesn't like to participate in class, which I didn't. I wanted to watch everybody else. I didn't want any attention on me. I was super shy, but that changed in middle school. I became very outgoing in middle school. But elementary, I was really, really shy. But I had a lot going on in my home life in elementary. And I don't know, it was just a lot. I was overwhelmed and I was dealing with a lot of different things that I couldn't control. And so I was shy. I didn't want any attention brought to me. I wanted to just sort of disappear into the shadows. But then in middle school, things changed. I became a lot more outgoing, a lot more enthusiastic about life. And things started doing a little bit better for me in school. I didn't get any more of those notes sent home that I wouldn't participate in class, and I was painfully shy. So what I've done with this little girl is I am working on the really dark spots first, her really dark shadows. I'm sort of mapping those out where she's leaning her head against the brick wall. I'm making that really dark. Taking my blender. I really, really love this blender because it is so big, but I really like to blend my graphite pencils with a blender instead of my finger. Now, when I was first learning to sketch and draw, I would use my finger, and of course that would get oils from my finger onto my paper, and sometimes that can cause your paper to break down. So I have learned since better. So, when you learn better, you do better. So I just like to take some of that graphite that's already on the paper, and I take the tip of that blender and I pull that graphite out from the darkest area. And that is another thing I like about the blender. When you go into a dark area, some of that graphite is going to stay on the tip, so you can go to another area and apply what is left over on the tip of that blender there, and it's a lot lighter, a lot more subtle. So I do like to do that. Instead of using my pencil, I just use what's left over in some areas, what is just left over on the tip of that blending stump. And it also applies much smoother than the pencil. The pencil leaves sort of marks. So when you use that blender, it's just a softer, smoother application. And you'll see after I use my pencils, I come back in there with my blender and just smooth it out across the paper. That gets rid of some of those marks from my pencil and helps just sort of even out the tone of her skin. Now I'm just working on just getting some of the midtones in and the lighter midtones, making sure that I avoid where her face is highlighted. I don't put any graphite in there at first. I want that to stay lighter. So I'm basically just mapping out the lights and the darks of her face. Just mapping in those shadows, trying to make sure that I get them as dark as I need them. Of course, you can always layer and go darker if you need to, or you can use a darker 6B pencil if you have some professional graphite pencils. If you don't, you can just use your 2B and just layer over a certain area a few times and it'll become pretty dark. Now it probably won't get as dark as say a 6B or a higher number B pencil could, because those leads are so soft that they just sort of glide on already really dark. And it's hard to sort of mimic that with just a regular 2B pencil that you would use for school. My other tool you see there that I love to use is my kneaded eraser when I'm doing graphite. I love my kneaded eraser for all kinds of media. For graphite, I love it for pastel. It's just, I haven't really used it too much with like wax-based colored pencil. It will work to a certain degree, but it's not as effective because that wax seems to stick to the paper. But for graphite, for pastel, things that are easily erased or easily lifted, it's perfect. It's the perfect tool. So now I'm just coming down there. I've gotten in her shadows sort of mapped out in the mid part of her face. So now I'm working on the sides of her face and right at the bottom under her nose and her lips, and just trying to get a nice dark shadow just down the side of that face. Then we're going to work on her lips, and I am working on where her top lip and her bottom lip sort of meet. I'm making that top lip just a tiny bit darker from the angle that her face is facing and the angle that the sun is hitting her face. That upper lip is quite a bit darker than her lower lip. So I'm just going ahead and darkening that upper lip just a little bit more than the lower lip. Then I'll come back in and add some details. And again, once I put my pencil work down, I come back with the blender and blend it to smooth that texture so that you can't really see those little marks made from the pencil, those little tiny lines. It just smooths it out and makes it look like beautiful, smooth skin. And again, I have got my little kneaded eraser. I love that kneaded eraser. And you can pinch it to just a tiny point and just go into the tiniest area and pick up some of that graphite and just leave a tiny highlight. You can also flatten it out, make it really big, and just remove all the graphite if you want to. So yeah, those two things, I just do not like drawing without my blender and my little kneaded eraser. The other thing that I don't like to use a lot of pencils when I'm drawing, because you can get those big sets of professional grade pencils and they go from H's to B's, and the HBs are in the middle, and the H's are a lot lighter, the lead is a lot harder, so it gives you a lighter value. The B's are much softer, they give you a much darker value. The problem is you have to switch pencils a lot if you want to change your values. And I just don't like to do that. When I get in my flow, when I get in that zone of creating art, I don't like to have to switch up a lot if I don't have to. So that's why you'll see me mostly stick with just my regular schoolyard pencil. Now this little girl looks a little sad. Even though she reminds me of myself, I wouldn't say I would be sad. I would be more contemplative, maybe. I would like to think about things, and I would like to do that by myself. And sometimes I would just get in the breezeway and lean up against the brick and just relax and watch everyone and take everything in just to see what was going on. You learn a lot more by watching sometimes. But for drawing, for art, the only way you're going to learn there is to do it, is to draw, just to practice. And I cannot encourage you enough to practice. It is not talent that's going to get you where you want to go. Talent is good, and for me, all talent is how fast you learn something. It's not a special thing, particularly because everyone can learn the skill. I think when people talk about talent, they just mean that person is a little quicker to pick it up, a little quicker to learn it, but anybody can learn to draw. I will stick my flag there and die on that hill that anybody can learn to draw. It's a skill just like anything else. Talent will only take you so far, but what's going to really get you there is putting in the work. Put that work in. Practice. Carry your sketchbook around with you. Practice sketching whatever you see in front of you. If you're outside, you see a leaf. Draw that leaf, draw a flower, draw a bug you might see, draw like a scene, like if you're in a courtyard at a building, an office building, wherever you might be, they might have just some benches. Draw the benches, draw people running around in the subway if you live in a city. In CVS, draw the people that are sitting there waiting for their prescriptions in those little hardback chairs. I mean, there's so many things that you can draw. Draw anything will help you develop your skills. And it is the best way and the fastest way to learn how to draw. There's nothing else that's going to take that place. You can read all the books you want. You can watch all the videos you want. But until you actually put a pencil to paper, you're just not learning at the level you need to. Another thing I just love about sketching is it does increase your hand-eye coordination. It also relaxes your brain. You get into that little Zen mode. It's really good for your mental health. I've often used my art as a way to soothe myself when I get a little bit too emotional about things, which is how this sketchbook got started. There were just so many children in the news that had either gone missing, been harmed, something terrible had happened to them, and it was just overwhelming me because when anyone hurts an animal, a child, or the elderly, it hits me right to my bones. They are helpless, they are our most vulnerable, and because of that, it just has a certain trigger for me. I just cannot stand when people do that. It's kind of like a little rage inside of me, and I have a lot of conflicting feelings, like rage. I want to really hurt the person that hurt these children or the elderly or an animal, but then I also have profound sadness for the child, for the animal, for that victim, because oh my gosh, they're helpless, they are vulnerable, they are the least able to protect themselves and fight back from the monsters and predators that roam among us. So, okay, I'm going to get off of my soapbox. We'll get back to drawing. Now, her hair, she has got it in sort of a little braid across the top part of her head, but only on one side. It's parted down the middle. She has beautiful little coils and curls in her hair, and her hair actually, she has a low hairline, so her hair actually grows down almost to her eyebrows. I may not do that in this drawing. I may bring it down a little bit lower, but I might not bring it down as low as it is actually on the little girl. I'm also trying to get those highlights in her hair. She has gotten her hair sort of pinned over to the side. She's got a little braid. That's what I'm working on right there. She's got a little braid that just goes across her hair, across that one little side of her hair, and it's just sort of clipped into the rest of her hair. It's really kind of cute the way that she has her hair. So that's all I'm working on. I'm trying to get that texture correct, trying to get those highlights correct. And she has her hair just in such a cute little style where it's just sort of pulled back away from her little face, and then just got a little braid on one side. She may have a braid on the other side. I just can't see it because of the brick wall. I don't know. But I am just drawing what I can actually see on her little head. And of course, I'm blending everything out. I'm going to come in here and darken this up where she's leaning against the brick. She's casting a shadow, or I should say the bricks are actually casting a shadow on her. And it's pretty dark. That's some of the darkest parts of the drawing. That and her eyes and the shadow of her shirt against her chest. So I'm just going in there with a deep dark pencil. As I come out from that though, I'm lifting off some of the pressure to make the pencil a little bit lighter. Where I want it darker, of course, I'm pressing the pencil a little bit harder against the paper. Try not to go too hard, because I've told you in the last video, you don't want those indentations on the page that's next, because when you go to draw on that page, then you'll have sort of the little ruts from the previous drawing. You don't want that. So one way you could actually avoid that is to put a piece of cardboard or, a thin piece of cardstock between the two pages, so that if you do press too hard, it'll go onto the indentions will be on the cardstock and not on your next sheet of paper. So now I'm just kind of trying to draw her part. She has a part right in the middle of her little head. She's also got this part of her hair, pulled back off of her face. But you cannot see her little braid on this side for some reason. She may have it going the other direction. I don't know. I'm just drawing what I see on my reference. And as you can see, I'm sorry about the lighting. The afternoon got away with me and the sun started shining through my window. So I do apologize for that. It's a little bit distracting, but I think you can still see what I'm doing. I'm getting in all those tiny little curls, all those little coils. She is just adorable to me. I just love her expression. She looks like an old soul, wise beyond her years. And I really connected with this particular drawing just because of the expression on her face, and because it brought me back to my elementary days when I would stand by the brick wall and watch everybody as they were out on the playground and just sort of take it all in. I would know who to avoid. I would know who was friendly. I would know, all those things. I would get all that information just by watching all the interactions. And I think that was just part of my personality at that time. I was always on guard, always trying to protect myself from things that I really couldn't protect myself from. But I tried. I did my best. And again, that's why children are a particularly pressing on my heart. It's because I've been there and done that, and I know what it is like to be vulnerable and to feel helpless. And I never want that to happen to any child. So I really am enjoying this sketchbook. I hope you're enjoying my journey with me. I hope it is helping you to sort of see some ideas about how you can draw, get a few tips. Hope it helps you relax your mind. Maybe you'll give it a go. Don't worry, everybody starts out somewhere. Believe it or not, I started out with stick figures just like everybody else. Like I said, it is a skill. You can learn it. You just have to put in the work. And here, I'm just trying to get some of the highlights in her hair. Her hair is so pretty, and it looks so soft. I just love the softness of it, the way that it looks just so soft, like she has really touchable soft hair. I'm just going to start on doing some of the bricks. Now, I'm not going to go way detailed on the bricks and the mortar in between the bricks, but I am going to add some detail. I want that to sort of lead your eye to her face, but I don't want it to be so detailed that you spend all your time looking at the bricks and the mortar and you don't look at her face. One good thing I have in my advantage is that humans automatically look for faces. That is the first thing they register when they look. So you are going to look at her face just automatically because you're human. But I don't want anything to get so overly detailed that it detracts from her face or fights with her face, the details of her face. So I'm just doing some light shadowing in here, nothing complicated. And I have it sort of pointing toward her face. So if your eye follows those shadows, you're going to just go right to her face. And it's not so detailed that it takes away from her face. So that is another thing you want to think about. You want to think about what your focus point is. For me, my focal point is her face. And I want all of my lines, all of my shadows to support that. I want everything to sort of point toward her face. I want all the shadows and the contrast in her shadows to be strongest in her face. So, and the more detailed in her face so that she remains the focal point. She is what I want you to look at. And I'm almost finished with this. Again, I'm sorry about that lighting. That lighting is rough. I'm going to have to put some sort of shield over my windows if I'm going to continue to draw into the afternoons. It's about 4 when I did this, 4 in the afternoon, 3 or 4. And that's when the sun comes around and shines directly into my studio window. And I took down the plantation shutters because they were blocking too much light out, and I put some shears, but now I think it's not blocking enough of the light out. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next Saturday.